The numbers are in. Prime Minister John Briceño has officially unveiled a $1.78 billion spending plan for the 2025-2026 fiscal year. The budget presented today in the National Assembly outlines the government's financial roadmap for the year ahead, covering everything from infrastructure and education to healthcare and social programs. With big investments on the table, all eyes will be on how the government plans to balance spending with revenue and what this means for everyday Belizeans.
We propose $1.782 billion in total spending, of which $1.253 billion are recurrent in nature and $528.8 million represent capital investments. In this budget cycle, $80 million previously classified as subsidies and transfers is being reclassified as what they truly are, which is personal emoluments. This is an important adjustment since these subsidies and transfers category imply an annual adjustable outlay as opposed to personal emoluments that carry different obligations. Therefore, for this fiscal year, $698 million. Let me repeat, for this fiscal year, $698 million is therefore allotted to salaries and pensions, representing 56% of total recurrent spending.
While the government has laid out a bold budget for the upcoming financial year, it's banking on $1.74 billion in revenues to fund it. That leaves a gap that will need to be filled, raising questions about how the shortfall will be managed. As the budget debate unfolds, all eyes will be on how the government plans to bridge the difference without putting too much pressure on taxpayers or borrowing beyond its means.
On the revenue side of the ledger, $1.74 billion is projected for revenue and grants, which is an increase of $94 million compared to the last period, or some 6% growth, to be achieved by continued economic growth and collection efficiencies. Of the $94 million, the largest increase, $53 million, is to come from a significant increase in bilateral and multilateral grants, with $34 million derived from recurrent revenue growth and $3 million in additional capital revenues.
The graph shows how the expenditure rose steadily, going from $1.36 billion in 2022 to what the forecast is in 2027-28 at $1.598 billion. Interestingly, the projection for that year is $400 million less than it is for 2026-27. On the flip side of the coin, the revenues and grants from 2022 went from $1.320 billion to a projected $1.783 billion in 2027. Again, the revenues for 2026-27 are higher. Belize's economy is picking up serious steam, with GDP growth hitting a solid 8.2% in 2024. Prime Minister John Briceño is calling it a clear sign that the country is moving in the right direction. Quote, "This is strong economic momentum," the PM said, highlighting the figure as proof that Belize's recovery and development strategies are paying off. The impressive growth rate puts Belize among the region's top economic performers for the year, fueling optimism for what's ahead.
In 2024, Belize recorded spectacular real GDP growth of 8.2%, primarily driven by advancements in the services and secondary sectors.
Among the highlights are significant investments allocated for infrastructure development.
This year, we will be appropriating a record $336.7 million to our Capital 2 budget. That is the portion of the overall capital program that is funded from general revenue as opposed to donor financing. This emphasis continues to be on the upgrading and maintenance of our road infrastructure, such as the Progreso to San Esteban Road, and others, and to provide the necessary counterpart resources for capital projects funded by our development partners.
Belize poured a hefty $438 million into infrastructure development in 2024, but not everyone is impressed with how the money was spent. Leader of the opposition, Tracy Taegar-Panton, has raised concerns, criticizing the government's approach to managing such a massive investment. While the spending signals a major push to improve roads, bridges, and public facilities, Taegar-Panton argues that the execution lacked transparency and strategic focus. As the government touts progress, the opposition is demanding answers and accountability.
There seems to be quite a lot of money being invested in infrastructure, and my cursory look at the budget estimates suggests that where it matters for the Belizean people in education, in health, in housing, there are going to be some serious adjustments in terms of the government's investment. There's no contingency planning for what happens, for example, with the global trade wars that are imminent and the impact that will have on our economy. There is no indication of how we are going to deal in a holistic way the energy crisis that we're already feeling the implications of. Those kinds of things. So those things matter to the Belizean people.
As the national budget heads to the floor of the House, the big question remains, will the $1.8 billion spending plan deliver real results or just more political back and forth? The full budget debate is set to kick off on May 26th and will run for 3 days. Expect fiery exchanges, bold promises, and sharp critiques as both sides of the aisle weigh in on how the billions should be spent. We'll be following every moment to bring you the highlights, the heat, and the headlines. Marion Ali for News 5.